So I was debating whether or not to review this one for Halloween or if I should wait for, of course, Christmas. But you know what? I said, what the hell? This is pretty much a Halloween movie. And since I reviewed Charlie Brown and The Great Pumpkin, I thought, I gotta do this one. Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. And as you can tell, this is a pretty old copy, but it's really cool. It's got both DVD and Blu-ray, and what can I say? This is a great movie. It looks good, it feels good, it is good. And that could be the greatest thing about this movie. It's not some little pushover thing. I mean, let's face it, Jack Skellington is probably one of the most recognizable characters in, movies and stuff. And it works, too. That's saying something right there. The movie does incredibly well, in my opinion, and it looks great from that point of view. They really went all out and stuff on this movie, and you can tell that Tim Burton was really giving it his all in the writing, the design, and so forth. And it works too. First of all, the opening of the movie is still so iconic. This is Halloween, has been probably done to death by some people, and yet I cannot deny how good it feels to listen to that song, to be like, this is Halloween. This is, in fact, I find myself sometimes actually, when I watch the movie, sometimes I'm actually singing the songs. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and she loved it. She loved it because I could actually act out huge parts of the movie. And let's just say that it was pretty rewarding for me and her in a few ways. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah, she was a big fan, and I got her quite a few things. I even got her one of those little poofy things with the little things that go down. It was Jack related. We still stay in touch from time to time, so it's not that bad. But it was such a great movie, and it's still something that I'm happy to have in my collection, and I love it. It's still a good movie. Now, with that being said, does it have its problems? Not really. It's a product of its timeline, and that's a good thing. What I thought was so great about the movie is the fact of how it builds itself. It's a great Halloween movie because that's predominantly the location we spend at, but then it can jump over to Christmas too. And that's been so good. This is a lot like the Charlie Brown, how I said it had that feeling. The difference is that while Linus got Halloween and Christmas mixed up, Jack knows what his holidays are. And in fact, he's a pure product of Halloween. However, he has become somewhat disillusioned with Halloween. I mean, if you do it long enough, it's going to affect you. People have to do things new every once in a while. I mean, I play video games. People are like, well, you're addicted. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm making YouTube videos. I build models. I go out. I talk with people. I see movies. I do things. I sometimes help people and stuff. I mean, I do a lot, but I'm not addicted. And in fact, I'm probably going to have to do a video where I'm like, here's a stop sign, one of those little stop when the fun stops. And I'm probably going to do that soon. But the movie is so good. It works so well in that regard. And that's actually what I think makes the movie better than most others. And I want to point that out too, because this was so good. It was so good. I could not help but feel rather impressed with the movie in all fairness. It just keeps building. Jack is, of course, the main focus of the movie. Then you have Sally, you have the residents of Halloween Town, and then we have Jack's dilemma. Well, on one hand, he's perfect. He's the Pumpkin King. He's pretty much the leader of Halloween Town. He's one of the biggest bad dudes around. And yet he's not a terrible person, even though he's dead. But you can hear in his voice when he's like, yeah, it's the same as last year and the year before that and the year before that. You can hear the concern coming in. He has not been inspired to really enjoy his job. And that's a big problem. And the monologue he goes into next is big song number. And this is a musical too, by the way. And yet that doesn't affect this movie. That tells you something. This is actually that good of a movie. And I love how he expresses his emotions. And one minute they're like, I am the master of fright, a demon of light, and I'll scare you right out of your pants. You can tell I've seen the movie a lot. And it just works. And then he goes into that softer tone. And, you know, you realize this is a guy who, if he still had skin and eye ducts, he could cry. He's, you know, and even Sally feels for him and stuff. And if you've actually had the really big deluxe soundtrack like I did at one point, I wish I still had it. I'm going to have to hunt it down eventually. There was actual narration done by Patrick Stewart. Yes, Captain Picard. And one of the lines at the end was Santa Claus coming to visit Jack. And since it's not in the film, this is not spoiling anything. And he's like, if you could do it all over again, knowing what you know now, knowing what you knew then, would you do it all over again? And he smiled like the old pumpkin king that I know and said, wouldn't you? It was perfect. And that conveys the film. Now, while they don't use Patrick Stewart in the film version for that soundtrack, it works perfectly. And on the Blu-ray here, they also have an animated poem short version that Tim Burton created. And that is actually narrated by Christopher Lee. This is a great film. This is a great movie. It really works. As we know, he's gone into Kingdom Hearts. He's gone into, you know, a few other games and stuff. He's had his own sequel, too, in video games. Actually worked on by Donnie Elfman, too, and Tim Burton, I believe. It's just such a great movie. And it just keeps building. And the best part about it is that Jack has this eventual revelation when he leaves and he sees all the doors, and he's fascinated by Christmas. And then he comes through, and that monologue of what he's doing in Christmas Town is so perfect. You feel like him. You feel this joy for Christmas. And yet, he is a Halloween thing. How is that even possible? And yet, it's what works so well in the movie. Then there's Jack's constant evolution, what's happening, and of course the introduction of Oogie Boogie and his Lock, Shock, and Barrel characters. And we really do get a lot from that. And Lock, Shock, and Barrel turn out to be pretty impressive. The film turns out to be pretty impressive, and it just keeps building and building until the end. After a certain point, I can't even talk about the ending because that would be totally spoiling for those few people who have not seen it. And I don't want to spoil an ending. This is one movie where I don't want to spoil it because it's so good. I mean, and remember, that little monologue I did was from the soundtrack and was never featured in the film. And it just works. And remember, I did say sequel, so you know Jack survives. But it was so good. And because of that, the movie has found life where few things find life. And it works so well. I love it for that reason. And because it works so well, it develops a lot of really good presence and likability and all these other things that just make it so much better than your typical film. With that being said, it's done so well. I mean, and plus, since it's all, you know, an actual puppet with an actual camera that's able to zoom and focus and come in and do all these sweeping camera moves, and you can have natural lighting, you can experiment, the movie has a more natural feel than some animated movies. And I think this is why when people do animated movies, it's so much harder, especially in CG. They have to really know what they're doing to make it all believable. In fact, I remember James Cameron saying he had met some of the smartest, stupidest people ever. They could do the greatest math in the world, and yet, you know, they're like, well, the math says it's perfect, but they did not understand anything about what makes a realistic shot, and it was always fake. Yet, if you had some of them who were getting it a little bit, and actual artists, you could make things work really well, and that's what makes CG so hard. It even works hard here because, remember, you have to do it frame by frame by frame by frame by frame by frame, but it works so well when you're done that way. And the movie actually does very well. I think this was the first stop-motion picture, too, by the way. I think. I'm not sure. But it was so beautifully well done, and it works so incredibly well. And I highly recommend that you get this movie. And remember, they re-release it every year. And I'm kind of wondering when the 4K copy comes out. There's even been 3D copies of the movie made. It's worth every penny you can pay into it. So it's a highly recommendable movie. It's so well done. The cinematography is good. The action is good. The characters, the voice acting, the music, especially the music. So I'm going to give this movie a full 9 out of 10. It's just that good.